May 1968. Thuathine Province. Firebase Bastogne. Western edge of the Shau Valley. 42 confirmed kills. 1 Marine. 4 hours. The math shouldn't work. One sniper can't hold off a company-sized assault. Can't break an NVA attack designed to overrun a firebase. Can't possibly survive when everyone else says his rifle is zeroed wrong. But Corporal James Thornton did it anyway. With a scope 0, every instructor told him would get him killed. The fog that morning hung thick enough to choke on. Through it came shadows. Then movement. Then 2 NVA battalions, 1,200 men pressing toward a firebase held by 200 Marines who knew they were bait. And Thornton's rifle was still zeroed wrong. For the next 4 hours, that wrong zero would become the deadliest piece of mathematics the NVA ever encountered in the Shau Valley. By the time the fog lifted, intelligence would count 73 enemy bodies. 42 belonged to Thornton. Almost none of the men on Firebase Bastogne expected to see dawn. James Thornton didn't choose Vietnam. Born 1946 in Grangeville, Idaho, population 3,200, elevation 3,000 feet, surrounded by mountains that taught you about angles whether you wanted to learn or not. He was supposed to take over his father's logging operation, cut timber in the Nez Perce National Forest, hunt mule deer every fall, live quietly in mountains that rose and fell like frozen waves. The draft notice arrived November 12, 1966, 3 weeks after his 20th birthday. His father had fought on Guadalcanal and Peleliu with the 1st Marines. Came home silent about what he'd seen. When Jimmy showed him the draft notice, Robert Thornton looked at it for a long time. Korea was cold, was all he said. Your war's going to be hot. No talk of Canada. No talk of college deferments they couldn't afford anyway. The Thorntons didn't run. That's how it worked. But here's what his father did teach him. Patience, precision, and how bullets don't fly straight in mountains. By age 12, Jimmy could judge distance by eye better than most men with rangefinders. By 16, he understood that shooting uphill or downhill changes everything. The bullet's arc follows the horizontal distance, not the angled distance. That knowledge, learned hunting elk on Idaho slopes, would matter more than anything the Marine Corps taught him. Fort Ord, California. 8 weeks of basic. Then, something unexpected happened. Gunnery Sergeant DeMarco watched Thornton qualify expert on the rifle range without trying hard. Where are you from? Idaho. Mountains. You hunt? Since I was a kid. DeMarco pulled him into a rushed 3-week sniper course at Camp Pendleton. They handed him an M14 with a Redfield 3x9 scope. Taught him the standard 3-100 meter zero every Marine rifleman used. At 300 meters, your point of aim equals your point of impact. Simple. Works perfectly. On flat ground. But nobody at Camp Pendleton understood what the Shau Valley would demand. Thornton landed at Da Nang on April 3, 1967. The heat hit like a wall. The smell, jet fuel, burning trash, decay accelerated by tropical heat was overwhelming. He was processed, assigned to 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, sent north to I Corps. Lance Corporal Rodriguez gave him the first real advice. Forget what they taught you at Pendleton. This place doesn't care about your training. The second piece came from another sniper. You're a sniper? Good luck with that. Can't see shit in the jungle anyway. By May 1968, the Shau Valley was the most dangerous ground in South Vietnam. 30 miles long, less than 2 wide. Mountains rising 4,000 feet on either side, western ridge marking the Laotian border. The Ho Chi Minh Trail ran through those mountains. The NVA used the Shau as a staging area. They owned it. Special Forces Camp Shau had been overrun in 1966. The valley belonged to the enemy. Firebase Bastogne was built in April 1968 as a blocking position. 105mm and 155mm howitzers aimed at interdicting supply routes. But everyone knew it was also bait. The NVA had mortars in those mountains. Recoilless rifles. Patience. Thornton arrived 3 weeks after the firebase was established. Everything was either straight up or straight down. Red scar on green mountainside. Sandbags, bunkers, wire, mud. And here's where the problem emerged. the problem that would have killed him if he'd followed doctrine. First week on Bastogne, Thornton took a shot at an NVA soldier crossing a trail 250 meters downhill. He aimed center mass, exactly as trained. The bullet went high, hitting a tree branch above the man's head. The NVA disappeared into jungle. That night, Thornton did the math his father had taught him. When you shoot downhill at a steep angle, the bullet's arc doesn't follow the angle distance. It follows the horizontal distance, which is shorter. A 300-meter shot at 45 degrees down is ballistically more like a 200-meter shot. Aim dead on at 300 with a standard 0, and you'll shoot high by 6 to 8 inches. In the Shau Valley, that's not a miss. That's a death sentence. So what did Thornton do? He pulled his rifle into a bunker and adjusted his scope, turned the elevation dial down, re-zeroed to hit point of aim at 100 meters instead of 300. The next morning, Staff Sergeant Kowalski caught him. "Thornton, what the hell are you doing to that rifle?" "Adjusting for the terrain, Staff Sergeant. You can't just change your zero. You zero at 300. That's doctrine." "Doctrine doesn't account for shooting downhill at 45-degree angles." Kowalski stared. "You're going to miss every shot." "Not if I do the math right. But here's the problem with being right when everyone thinks you're wrong. Nobody believes you until bodies start dropping." The argument went up the chain. The armorer refused to certify the rifle. The lieutenant who ran the sniper section told Thornton he was wrong. Other snipers thought he was crazy. "You're going to get someone killed with that setup," one said. Thornton kept the 0 anyway, because, in his gut, mountains don't lie. Idaho had taught him. And if he was going to survive the Shau Valley, he needed to trust what he knew over what some training manual written for Kansas farm fields told him. 147 days left until DEROS. If his 0 was wrong, he wouldn't make it. The attack began at 0430 on May 17, 1968. Thornton was already awake in his sandbag position on the northwest corner. Nobody slept well on Bastogne. Every night you waited for mortars or sappers. The question wasn't if, just when. First indication, a hollow thump from the mountains. 2 seconds later, the whistle of incoming. Incoming! 82mm mortars walked across the firebase. Preparation fire, softening defenses, which meant the real attack was coming next. At 0445, through lifting fog, Thornton saw them. NVA soldiers moving in the jungle 200 to 400 meters out. Not guerrillas in black pajamas. North Vietnamese regulars in khaki uniforms, carrying AK-47s and RPGs, advancing with discipline. The firebase opened up. M60s from bunkers, M16s from fighting positions, M79 grenade launchers, tracers cutting red lines through fog. But the NVA kept coming. So here's the tactical problem Thornton faced. His sector was the northwest corner where the ridgeline dropped sharply into a ravine. Standard doctrine said you couldn't defend that sector effectively because the angle was too steep. The Marine Corps had put sandbags there more for morale than anything else. But that's exactly where the NVA were coming. At 0500, Thornton spotted an NVA squad leader coordinating his men from behind a fallen log. Range, 280 meters. Angle, approximately 40 degrees downhill. With a standard 300-meter 0, he would aim dead on and miss high. With his 100-meter 0 and mental holdover calculation, he aimed 2 inches below the man's sternum. He pressed the trigger. Through the scope, he saw the NVA officer slam backward. First blood. For the next hour, Thornton held the northwest sector alone. Every other position was fully engaged. Artillery couldn't fire close support. The NVA were inside minimum range. Air support was grounded by fog. The firebase had to hold with rifles alone. And the NVA were learning. They'd fought Marines before. They knew Marine marksmanship was excellent at flat ranges, but struggled in mountains. They used reverse slope tactics, appearing briefly before dropping into dead ground, but Thornton's math anticipated that. 340 meters, 45 degrees downhill, hit. 220 meters, 30 degrees downhill, hit. 390 meters, steep angle through canopy gap, hit. At 0615, Kowalski crawled into his position with a radio. "Thornton, how many you got?" 11 confirmed. Staff Sergeant. Kowalski stared. 11. Jesus Christ. Keep shooting. But the NVA weren't stupid. By 0700, they'd identified Thornton's position as a threat. RPG rounds started slamming into sandbags. A K-47 fire chewed up the position. At 0730, the firebase executive officer arrived with orders. We're calling in artillery danger close. When it lifts, they're going to rush the wire. If they breach the perimeter, this firebase is lost. Thornton checked his ammunition. Started with 120 rounds. Fired 43. That left 77 rounds for what was coming. If the NVA massed for assault, 77 rounds wouldn't be enough. Not even close. At 0745, Marine 155mm shells from Firebase Birmingham screamed overhead. Danger close, 150 meters beyond the wire. The explosions tore up jungle, shook ground, threw bodies. When the barrage lifted at 0800, the NVA came again. Thornton counted through his scope. 40, 50, 60 soldiers moving through smoke and dust. More behind them. This was the main assault, the push designed to overrun the firebase. But Thornton saw something others couldn't see from their flat-angle positions. The NVA were funneling through a natural choke point, a narrow ravine leading up to his sector. The sides were too steep to climb quickly. They had to move single file or two abreast through the bottom. From other positions, that ravine was invisible. From Thornton's elevated angle, it was clear as day. He'd spent 3 days studying every fold in his sector, drawing range cards, calculating holdovers. The ravine was marked as Target Reference Point 7, 260 meters, 38-degree down angle, hold 2.5 inches low. So what was Thornton's choice? Follow standard tactics, engage nearest threats, slow the assault's momentum, or hold that ravine. Break the assault before it reached the wire. He had no orders, no air support, no help from adjacent positions. They were fully engaged. He had 77 rounds, his unconventional 0, and math learned hunting Idaho mountains. The lead NVA soldier appeared at the ravine entrance carrying an RPG launcher. Range, 258 meters. Down angle, 38 degrees. Thornton placed crosshairs 2.5 inches below the man's chest. The M14 kicked. The soldier collapsed. The RPG clattered against the ravine wall. Soldiers behind him froze. Before they could react, Thornton worked the bolt. Brass ejected, spinning. He chambered another round. The next soldier moved forward to recover the RPG. Same range, same angle, same holdover. Hit. Now the ravine was blocked. NVA. Soldiers tried climbing the sides. Thornton shifted aim. 270 meters. 40 degrees down. Hit. 290 meters. Miss high, adjust. 290 meters. Adjusted. Hit. The ravine was becoming a kill zone. The NVA squad leader recognized the problem. Thornton saw him through the scope, pointing, shouting. They tried suppressing his position with AK fire, but they couldn't get an accurate angle. Bullets went high, cracking overhead or thudding into sandbags. One soldier tried flanking, moving up the western side into thicker jungle. Range, 320 meters. Angle, 42 degrees down. Target moving fast, visible only seconds at a time. Thornton led by 3 feet. Fired. Miss. Too far ahead. The soldier dove for cover. Thornton waited. 30 seconds. 45. There. Movement at bamboo base. Led by 2 feet this time. Hit. At 0810, Lieutenant Reeves appeared at Thornton's position. Corporal, you're drawing attention. They're bringing up a recoilless rifle. Where? 350 meters out. You're 11 o'clock. They're going to blow your position apart. The Type 60 Chinese recoilless rifle, essentially a tank killer firing 82mm shells that could punch through sandbags like tissue paper. 4-man crew was manhandling it into position. If they got it set up and loaded, Thornton's position would cease to exist. So what's the problem? They were in deep shadow, mostly concealed. Range, 355 meters. Angle, 39 degrees down, and they were moving fast. Thornton calculated quickly. At 355 with his 0, hold 4 inches low. but only the gunner's upper body was visible. No time for perfect shots. He aimed for visible mass, head and shoulders. Fired. Hit. Gunner collapsed. Bolt. Chamber. Aim. Fired. Hit. Loader dropped. Third crew member grabbed the weapon, trying to drag it. Thornton put a round through his back at 360 meters. Fourth crew member ran. Thornton let him go. One man couldn't operate the weapon alone. Lieutenant Reeves stared. 4 shots. 400 meters downhill. All hits. What the hell did they teach you in sniper school? They didn't, sir. I learned it hunting elk. Thornton's rifle bolt locked back. Empty magazine. He dropped it, pulled a fresh 20-round magazine. His hands shook slightly. Not fear, just adrenaline and exhaustion. 4 hours of combat. 3 magazines left. 60 rounds. Through the scope, he saw the NVA regrouping at 350 meters. He counted 40 soldiers visible, probably more behind them. 60 rounds. 40 plus targets. The math wasn't good. Kowalski crawled in again. Air support's 5 minutes out. Cobras and fast movers. Can you hold? 5 minutes. Thornton looked through the scope at NVA, soldiers fixing bayonets. That meant the next assault would be close quarters. A rush to the wire and through it. He had 5 minutes to break their will. The NVA came again, faster now, using covered approaches Thornton hadn't seen before. They'd learned, staying out of the ravine, spreading wider. He picked targets carefully now. Squad leaders first, radio operators second, heavy weapons crews third. 320 meters, squad leader with binoculars, hit. 340 meters, radio operator with antenna pack, hit. 360 meters, soldier carrying RPG, hit. Each shot counted. Each shot had to matter. Bolt locked back. Second magazine empty. 40 rounds left. The NVA reached 200 meters. Too close. If they got to 150 meters, they'd be below the angle where his zero advantage mattered. They'd be in grenade range. Thornton shifted to rapid fire. Controlled pairs. 2 rounds per target. 210 meters. Hit. Hit. 190 meters. Hit. Miss. Adjust. Hit. His peripheral vision caught movement right. NVA soldier with satchel charge. Bangalore torpedo meant to blow the wire. Range. 160 meters. No time for math. Instinct. Fired. The soldier went down. The charge rolled downhill. Didn't detonate. Distance. The distinctive whop 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 of Huey rotors. Then the higher-pitched scream of jet engines. Cobras came low and fast, miniguns shrieking at 6,000 rounds per minute. 4 Phantoms dropped napalm canisters that tumbled end over end before igniting. The jungle erupted orange. The NVA assault broke. Soldiers retreated into smoke and flames. Thornton lowered his rifle. His arms trembled with fatigue. Ears rang. He'd fired 68 rounds in 30 minutes. His shoulder felt beaten with a hammer. He had 12 rounds left. He wouldn't need them. The airstrikes lasted 7 minutes. Miniguns chewed jungle. Napalm turned green to black. The stench, burning trees, cordite, fuel, flesh rolled over the firebase. Then, silence. Thornton sat back against sandbags, rifle across his lap. His hands were shaking properly now, adrenaline crashing. Fatigues black with sweat, red with mud. Blood from shrapnel cut on his forearm had dried. Major Cromwell appeared. "Corporal Thornton, we've been doing visual counts. How many do you think you got?" 37 confirmed, sir. Maybe 5 more I couldn't confirm. Cromwell nodded slowly. Intelligence is counting 42 bodies in your sector. Most in that ravine. The ravine that isn't supposed to exist on our maps. Pause. Your scope 0. Your platoon sergeant said it violates doctrine. Yes, sir. How many rounds? 108, sir. From 0430 to 0830. 108 rounds. 42 confirmed kills. That's 39% hit rate, at ranges exceeding 250 meters, shooting downhill at extreme angles, in combat. Cromwell looked at Kowalski. "Staff Sergeant, I want every sniper on this firebase to re-zero their rifles the way Corporal Thornton has his zeroed. Effective, immediately." Kowalski hesitated. "Sir, that's not doctrinal." "I don't give a damn about doctrine. Doctrine almost got us overrun. Thornton's wrong Scope Zero just saved this firebase. At 1400 hours, after 6 hours of sporadic fire, Firebase Bastogne finally went quiet. Thornton sat cleaning his M14. Exhaustion had settled into his bones. He'd eaten nothing since 0200. Drunk, maybe a pint of warm water. Felt hollowed out. Battalion wanted a full after-action report. Thornton described it clinically, without emotion. Showed them his range card with a ravine marked. Explained the holdover calculations. Walked them through the math. The intelligence officer studied the card. This ravine isn't on any maps. How did you know it was there? I watched my sector for 3 weeks, sir. Saw how shadows fell, how vegetation grew. There had to be a low spot. And you calculated all these holdovers in your head? During combat? I've been doing that math since I was 12, sir. It's just hunting. Major Cromwell came in. Corporal Thornton, I'm putting you in for a Silver Star. What you did saved lives. Probably saved this firebase. I don't need a medal, sir. I was just doing my job. That's not for you to decide. Over the next week, word spread through 1st Battalion about the Idaho sniper. Other snipers asked questions. How did he calculate angles? What was his holdover formula? Could he teach them? Some were skeptical. That's too complicated for combat. You're going to screw up the math and miss. But others got it, especially Mountain State kids. A corporal from Colorado. Another from Montana. They understood immediately. Within 2 weeks, half the battalion's snipers had re-zeroed to 100 meters and were calculating mountain holdovers. The ones who changed hit more targets. Numbers don't lie. The citation arrived July 2, 1968. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against the enemy, Corporal Thornton, through exceptional marksmanship and tactical innovation, single-handedly repelled an enemy company-sized assault on the northwest sector, accounting for 42 confirmed enemy killed. Ceremony at battalion headquarters in Da Nang. Medal pinned. Marines he didn't know shook his hand, called him hero. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a survivor who'd done math correctly. But here's what mattered more. Scout Sniper Platoon began teaching the Unconventional Zero to new arrivals. Not an official curriculum, doctrine still called for 300-meter zero, but instructors quietly pulled Mountain State kids aside and taught them Thornton's math. The technique spread unit to unit, Marine to Marine, through the unofficial network that always exists below official chains of command. An after-action report specifically mentioned innovative adaptation of rifle zeroing procedures for mountainous terrain and recommended further study. Division filed it and forgot it. But the snipers remembered. By 1969, snipers throughout I Corps were using modified zeros for mountain warfare. Some called it the Idaho Zero. Others just called it common sense. The Marine Corps never officially adopted it. But the men who survived the Shau Valley knew what worked. Thornton finished his tour November 18, 1968. 365 days in country. 78 confirmed kills total. He was 22 years old. James Thornton stepped off a commercial 707 at SeaTac Airport on November 22, 1968, wearing dress greens with Silver Star ribbon, duffel bag over shoulder, 36 hours traveling. One moment, war zone. Next moment, airport terminal with fluorescent lights and piped-in music. Nobody met him. His family didn't know exactly when he'd arrive. He caught a Greyhound to Lewiston, hitchhiked the last 40 miles to Grangeville. His father was in the driveway when the truck dropped him off. Robert Thornton looked at his son for a long moment, then pulled him into a rough hug. "Welcome home." That night at dinner, his father tried. "The paper said, you got a Silver Star. What for?" "Just did my job." Must have been something. It was. They didn't push. But they didn't understand either. His father's war had been comprehensible. Fight the Japanese, save the world. Jimmy's war was muddy, controversial, questioned. He went back to logging. Mountains were the same. Trees were the same. But he wasn't. The nightmares started 2 weeks after returning. Always the same. Back in the sandbag position, looking through the scope. But when he fired, the NVA soldier turned around, and it was someone he knew. His father, Rodriguez. Kowalski. He'd wake gasping, sweat soaked, shoulder aching from phantom recoil. He tried talking to other veterans, his father, guys from Korea. But it wasn't the same. They'd fought wars that made sense, come home to parades. Jimmy came home to silence. For 17 years, he told no one about the ravine, the math, the 42 dead men. He worked, drank, but not too much, hunted elk every fall, alone where nobody asked questions. In 1985, a Marine Corps historian working on a Vietnam sniper's book found the Bastogne after-action report, tracked down Thornton, called him. "Mr. Thornton, I'd like to interview you about May 17, 1968. I don't talk about that. Sir, what you did was remarkable, should be remembered. Why? We lost that war. What does it matter?" Eventually, Thornton agreed to a phone interview. Talking was harder than expected, easier than feared. The book, published in 1987, single chapter covered Thornton's actions, titled The Idaho Zero, Innovation Under Fire. Other Vietnam veterans read it. Some reached out. Slowly, Thornton started attending VFW meetings, talking to other snipers, other Mountain State Marines who remembered the Shau. 1993. Reunion of 1st Battalion, 4th Marines in San Diego. Kowalski was there, retired, wheelchair-bound, living in Arizona. "Thornton, I owe you an apology." "For what, Staff Sergeant?" "For telling you your zero was wrong. You saved my life that day. Saved all our lives. You were going by the book. Can't fault that. Sometimes the book's wrong. You knew that. I didn't." The Marine Corps never officially changed doctrine regarding rifle zeros. Standard 300-meter zero remains in field manuals today. But in the mountains, Afghanistan's Hindu Kush, northern Iraq highlands, scout snipers rediscovered what Thornton knew in 1968. Angle matters more than distance. By 2005, Marine Scout Sniper School at Quantico was teaching angle compensation as part of advanced mountain warfare training. They didn't call it the Idaho Zero. They called it Angle Modified Zeroing, or AMZ. The principle was identical. Adjust your scope zero and hold over calculations based on angle of engagement, not just linear distance. Army's Asymmetric Warfare Group published a 2008 white paper recommending modified zeroing procedures for mountainous terrain. The paper cited historical examples, including, though not by name, Firebase Bastogne. Navy SEALs, operating in eastern Afghanistan mountains, developed their own angle compensation formulas. Older SEALs who'd worked with Marine snipers in Vietnam told newer operators, "This isn't new. We figured this out in the Shau." In 2010, Thornton received a letter from a Marine sniper deployed to Helmand Province, Afghanistan. "Your techniques saved my life yesterday. I was on a ridgeline engaging enemy at 400 meters downhill. I remembered the Idaho Zero story and adjusted my holdover. It worked. The math works. Thank you for figuring it out, so we didn't have to." Thornton kept that letter in his desk drawer until he died. The validation wasn't official. No Marine Corps publication credits Corporal James Thornton's innovative scope zeroing technique. But in the oral tradition of snipers, knowledge passed veteran to rookie, instructor to student, war to war, Thornton's name is remembered because he took what mountains taught him, applied it to different mountains in a different war, and proved that sometimes innovation matters more than doctrine. James Thornton died March 14, 2019, at age 72. Cause: Agent Orange-related cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, fighting it for 3 years. VA finally acknowledged the connection in 2016, too late to change the outcome. He died at home in Grangeville, Idaho, same house where he'd grown up. His sister was with him, never married, no children. Funeral at First Presbyterian Church. 37 people attended. Most were Vietnam veterans from surrounding counties. Kowalski, 86 and wheelchair-bound, made the trip from Arizona. "Jimmy never bragged," Kowalski said in his eulogy. "Never talked about what he did unless you pressed him. But I was there. I saw it. He stood in that corner position for 4 hours and held off a company. One man, one rifle. Math he'd learned hunting elk. That's all it was. Math and courage." VFW post buried him with military honors. 7 rifles fired 3 volley salute. Marine color guard folded the flag, presented it to his sister. His grave marker reads, James Robert Thornton, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, Vietnam, 1967 to 1968, Silver Star, 1946 to 2019. No mention of Firebase Bastogne. No mention of 42 confirmed kills. No mention of the Unconventional Zero that saved lives and changed how Marines fought in mountains. But in Marine Scout Sniper School, instructors still tell the story. They don't always get the name right. Some call him the Idaho Marine. Some call him the guy who re-zeroed his rifle. But they tell the story of the sniper who trusted what he knew over what the manual said, who proved that sometimes innovation is the difference between survival and catastrophe. In Grangeville, the VFW post dedicated a small memorial in 2020, a plaque with Thornton's name and brief description. It doesn't say much, just James Thornton, USMC, Silver Star recipient, Vietnam veteran. He brought men home. That's what mattered to him. Not the kills, not the medal, not recognition. He brought men home, including himself. What would you have done with everyone telling you that you were wrong? Could you have held that position for 4 hours, calculating angles in your head while bullets tore apart your sandbags? Could you have trusted math over doctrine, Idaho elk hunting over Marine Corps training, when 200 Marines' lives depended on getting it right? What part of this story stayed with you? The 42 confirmed kills in a single morning? The Unconventional Zero everyone said would get him killed? The 17 years of silence before he could talk about it? The Agent Orange cancer that killed him 50 years after he came home? Did you know that Vietnam veterans faced not just enemy bullets, but decades of PTSD, Agent Orange illnesses, and cold homecomings, wounds that took 50 years to kill them? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you served in Vietnam, or know someone who did, let us know. These stories need to be heard. From the men who lived them, from the families who waited, from the country that never properly welcomed them home. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, even when they complicate our understanding of war, share this with someone who should hear it. Because sometimes courage and controversy can coexist. Because soldiers deserve honor, even when wars don't. Because James Thornton and men like him fought for each other when no one else was fighting for them, and they deserve to be remembered for that, if nothing else. The math works. It worked in 1968. It worked in Afghanistan. It'll work in whatever mountains American soldiers fight in next. Because angles don't change. Gravity doesn't change. And the courage to trust what you know, even when everyone says you're wrong, that doesn't change either.